Freetown, Sierra Leone's capital city, has experienced rapid growth in recent years, with a population now over 1 million. Although resource-rich, the country's turbulent history, interspersed with socio-political conflict, natural disasters and epidemics, has placed considerable pressure on the city's resources and infrastructure. Political unrest in the 1990s gave rise to a decade-long civil war, causing the mass displacement of rural communities and disruption to rural food production. Many took refuge in Freetown, placing greater reliance on urban food sources. Rapid urbanisation, migration and growth, paired with the lack of available land and high rent prices, led to the proliferation of approximately 68 densely populated informal settlements. These settlements account for 35% of the population and experience poor infrastructure, social services and recognition. Despite this, the city remains resilient to the numerous challenges it faces, with a diverse range of individuals and communities working together to support and empower one another. These connections will be critical when addressing the challenges presented by COVID-19, with particular regard to food insecurity, which disproportionately burdens the city's most vulnerable members. Our project aims to provide greater insight into the issue of food insecurity in Freetown, both generally and during times of crisis. It seeks to build the city's resilience by improving food security through context-specific strategies that help to support urban and peri-urban agricultural practices, which is the production of crops, livestock and fisheries within and surrounding the city's boundary. Despite livestock rearing and fishing playing a critical role in Freetown's food system, our strategies are crop-specific and thus the scope of this research is confined exclusively to crop cultivation. Our study builds upon the past 2 years of research conducted through the Learning Alliance between the University College London and the Sierra Leone Urban Research Centre, in collaboration with the Federation for Urban and Rural Poor and Partners. We are 5 students from UCL, coming from the UK, USA, China and Hong Kong, and our SLURC intern from Freetown, Sierra Leone. We conducted 18 qualitative semi-structured interviews with key stakeholders via Zoom, phone and email, including community facilitators, farmers, farming associations and NGOs, both in Freetown and internationally. This built upon secondary sources reviewed through desk-based research throughout the academic year. By adopting an environmentally just perspective, Freetown's food system can be improved to better serve those most vulnerable. Environmental justice combines environmental protection and social justice to determine whether marginal groups bear a disproportionate burden of environmental problems and whether planning policy and practice affecting the environment are equitable and fair. Incorporating the dimensions of equal distribution, recognition, participation and resilience enables everyone to be represented within the community. Over half of Freetown's population is classified as food insecure. Food security is when all people, at all times, have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe and nutritious food that meets their dietary needs and food preferences for an active and healthy life. This includes simultaneously achieving 4 dimensions: food availability, food access, food utilisation, and stability or consistency over time. Food insecurity can be classified into 3 types: chronic, lasting 6 months or more, transitory or temporary, and cyclical, depending on seasonal changes. Food insecurity in Freetown is due to low agricultural productivity, low incomes, limited infrastructure, and poor access to social services such as water, healthcare, and education. Yet, the prevalence of these conditions is unequally distributed throughout the city, with over 60% of those who reside in informal settlements being deemed food insecure. Female and single-headed households are more vulnerable, particularly widows. The cultural gender division of labour and societal roles disproportionately burdens women due to their caretaking responsibilities for children and limited livelihood opportunities.
We need land. We need food. Medication.
Respondents express a need for more formal and informal markets in every community to increase food access. Those that live a greater distance from local markets have to spend a greater amount of time and money accessing food.
We have our own markets as a community. People that are selling in the markets go at the CBD and purchase those items of foods that people need. Community members come and buy it for them at the market that we have. but the price is going to be different. So that difference, the transport cost is going to be added to that transfer packet.
To combat this issue, certain communities have adopted UPA practices as a livelihood strategy and food source, particularly in the city's mountainous peri-urban regions such as Regents, Gloucester, Dwarzak and Leicester, among others. Although much of Freetown's food supply, such as rice, cassava leaves and vegetables, originates in the rural provinces and from international imports, a significant proportion comes from UPA. Our research found that UPA is more commonly practiced by women on both small independent backyard plots and through farming associations in which they contribute time, money and labour towards communal plots. Farmers typically cultivate vegetables using traditional farming techniques, although crops vary between seasons. Depending on the household, the food produced may be consumed and/or sold. Frequently, food cultivated by associations is sold at markets, with the profits saved to be reinvested at the direction of the association's elected executive board members towards the communal plot or divided among the members. This can later be used to pay for inputs such as seeds, fertiliser, tools and even school fees or to support association members in times of need. In this way, UPA not only provides readily accessible food but serves as a supplementary source of income for households. Further, associations provide a financial and social support network which offers a range of benefits, although bureaucratic processes often make it difficult for associations to register. Yet, there are barriers to UPA which mainly revolve around the issues of land tenure, availability, quality and size, limited input supplies and difficulties accessing markets, both generally and during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Number one, the land of safe. Who the plans, not to we getting land in the now land then the land we did. Sometimes some man are renting the rent and the but the people we getting land there then come sometimes they say yeah they can't be here this year.
One, to provide land. Secondly, they should provide seedlings for them. Thirdly, they should provide fertilizers. Then they should provide tools, enough tools for them. I think that can improve in food security.
Due to the lack of land availability, some will cultivate on the periphery of dump sites which may contaminate the produce grown and present health and safety concerns for farmers and consumers alike.
Most of the people, they buy foods from outside. At the same time, they also access the food that are grown around CKG, which is a dump site, where you will see those women, they will grow their foodstuffs.
These challenges, among others, are all underpinned by poverty, which exacerbate the difficulties faced by those most vulnerable. Environmentally unjust practices allow these problems to continue as these difficulties are not recognised in policy and planning. Women bear the brunt of these challenges due to their increased engagement in UPA and therefore exposure to contaminants, as well as their marginalisation in society stemming from systematic and institutional obstacles that make it more difficult to obtain land. COVID-19 and the preventative lockdown measures exacerbate such UPA challenges and food insecurity in Freetown.
The differences are great. In the Ebola period, some of these challenges are not enormous at all compared to now.
Although food is being produced by UPA, the difficulty lies in linking suppliers and consumers. The curfew prevents farmers from being able to both harvest and transport their goods to market in a timely manner, reducing their income and resulting in spoiled food. Additionally, the demand from many of their large-scale consumers, often consisting of hotels and restaurants, has decreased due to lockdown measures, yet many households desperately need these goods.
As a result of the COVID-19, there is a skyrocket of prices now. There is some amount of additional cost attached to it because of the scarcity, especially when vehicles are not flying from the rural area to the urban city.
Also, the lack of advanced lockdown warning, along with limited funds and refrigeration, means that people struggle to maintain food stocks, contributing to transitory food insecurity. Smallholder farmers, food vendors, women, children and informal settlers are disproportionately impacted as they rely more heavily on UPA for their livelihoods and food sources.
Things like urban farming, kickstarting that in some of our slum communities because government interventions have included already 2 lockdowns over 3 days. And when people live on less than $1 a day, and they only can eat what they can purchase that day, what they can earn that day. It's really important for us to build some resilience.
Freetown City Council's COVID-19 response plan is built upon 3 pillars: community ownership, gender mainstreaming, and reducing the gap between protocol and practice. The promotion of UPA through backyard farming addresses these pillars to increase food security in both times of crisis and the long term. The initiative provides training to groups of informal settlers on urban farming practices. Upon training completion, recipients receive vegetable seeds, soil, farming equipment, and water. The following recommended strategies have been drawn from Nairobi, Quito, and Kampala, which offer fertile grounds to address the previously mentioned UPA challenges and bolster the FCC's COVID-19 response plan as they encompass a multi-stakeholder, multi-sectoral, and multi-scalar approach. We've selected these case studies as they target the challenges presented to food security in Freetown, as well as their success in their respective cities. In Nairobi, many female and youth farmers have adopted vertical farming initiatives which involve growing crops upwards to maximise yield to land ratio, producing more food in less space. Although it can take several forms, it can be as basic as using a simple wire fencing for the structure, lining it with fabric and filling it with compost, providing support for vertical growth. This technique is suitable for dense urban spaces due to its small surface area. They can be placed on most surfaces, tight spaces, and in flood-prone areas. Their design is accessible, convenient, and requires little maintenance, making it more suitable for people with physical limitations. However, vertical farms require good quality compost and may require additional fertiliser throughout the growing process. For Freetown's farmers, the ability to practice UPA at home would benefit those most vulnerable, particularly female widows, as they can tend to their other responsibilities while shortening the food chain. This reduces the reliance on food transported from the provinces, especially in times of crisis. Whilst this addresses the issues related to land size, it requires comprehensive land tenure policies that promote and devote land towards UPA activities. Quito is utilising urban farming as part of its COVID-19 response to mitigate the impacts on people's food security and livelihoods. The municipality is supporting UPA by providing technical assistance and training to farmers, as well as distributing vehicle permits to allow for home deliveries of food. It is cooperating with private logistic enterprises to collect and deliver food produced by urban and peri-urban gardens to homes via diversified and shortened distribution channels. This contributes to fairer prices for farmers, since there are fewer middlemen, and ensures farmers get a larger share of the profits, even when their produce cannot be brought to market. The Food Bank of Quito is assisting in mapping family-scale farmers, vulnerable communities and food markets, and then providing quality seeds to smallholders. All of these efforts are underpinned by participatory mapping processes that have identified vulnerable groups based on factors including age, gender, poverty, and differences in ability. The FCC, SLURC and FedUp have already taken steps towards implementing a similar strategy by identifying Freetown's most vulnerable community members and distributing food packages and vouchers. There is an opportunity to collect produce cultivated through UPA and distribute it throughout the city, both delivering food and supporting livelihoods. This would occur through an e-commerce initiative similar to the one used in Kampala, whereby motorcycles known as boda bodas are being used to pick up and deliver food from UPA sites. Freetown could utilise Okadas to collect food from farms and produce that isn't sold at market and distribute it throughout the city. This multi-actor system helps to build capacity and resilience, encourage equal distribution, and provide recognition to vulnerable stakeholders. Moving beyond the crisis, the continued identification and mapping of such communities are crucial for future socio-environmentally just planning, policy and practice, particularly for UPA stakeholders. Community facilitators for our social networks and knowledge of their communities should be utilised to aid in this task and can be used to establish links with the municipality and NGOs to facilitate the provision of inputs such as seeds and tools. This initiative would prove beneficial to incorporate into Freetown's disaster risk and management plan due to the intensity of the wet season and frequency of natural hazards that disrupt, hinder and endanger people's mobility and access to food. Our research was limited by our data collection methods due to time constraints and COVID-19 restrictions. As we relied on community representatives and executive members of farming associations as our primary source of information, we understand that our data may not fully represent all individuals and their experiences across Freetown. As we spoke to more male representatives, we supplemented our findings with secondary data to better understand female experiences. Also, Due to the nature of our interviews, we relied more heavily on qualitative data. Quantitative data was hard to obtain and the data found online was minimal or outdated. Furthermore, COVID-19's constantly changing situation makes it difficult to accurately predict future outcomes and potential consequences. Despite this, these strategies build upon Freetown's existing capacities to increase food security and transform into a more socially and environmentally just city. They address the most prominent issues regarding land, inputs and market accessibility. Further recommendations include streamlining registration processes for farming associations, transitioning towards a circular food system in which organic waste can be recovered and composted by individuals or channeled to designated composting sites to be used as fertiliser in UPA, and integrating e-commerce platforms and mobile devices which can aid in emergency response food deliveries and monitor supply and demand levels across the city. Further areas of research can build upon this by mapping suitable land for UPA and unregistered farming associations, as well as identifying community groups that help facilitate future interventions. By integrating UPA into Freetown's food system through policies and practices that address the challenges faced by farmers, it can increase food security in a manner that empowers communities, builds the capacity of women, and creates equitable policy in a post-COVID-19 environment. As the challenges faced vary across the city, such strategies require contextual application to each community, facilitated through a bottom-up participatory approach. We believe that UPA offers opportunities to foster a more just, sustainable, robust and resilient food system during times of crisis and ultimately feed Freetown's future.